Kumlan and a Black Gemara. Today's daf is Daf Yud Zayin, and we're concluding the first pedic. We were talking about Bakol, Mikol, Kol, the three others, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, that they were so special. The Yetzer Hara had no control over them whatsoever, and some say even David HaMelech. So we're up to the Gemara here, about 7 lines from the top of the page. Torah Bonon, a rabbi's talk. Shisha le'sholem malach hamavis. There were 6 people who passed away, not because of the malach hamavis, not because they committed a sin, but they died because Hashem decided that it's time for them to join him. The Elohim, these were the 6 people. The Yud Zayin of an Aleph, about 10 lines on the top. These are the people who passed away, not because the Yetzer Hara had any control over them, or the malach hamavis had control over them. It's because they died like Moshe Rabbeinu, Mrs. Neshika. The Elohim, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, Miriam. Avram, Yaakov, the people about Kremel, had blessed by everything. That means nothing was missing in their life. Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam, the Sibu, it says Api Hashem. They pass Api Hashem, and therefore, like Aaron, Moshe as well, and Miriam. So Miriam, like Sibu Api Hashem. How do you know Miriam also passed away the same way as the brothers? Api Zayin. Omer Abelazar, and Miriam, not Miriam, makes me also passed away with Neshika. How do I know that? We learn out Sham Moshe. Moshe says by Yemusu Sham Moshe, and we know that Moshe passed away like Aaron, and it says by Miriam as well. But Thomas Sham Miriam. Why doesn't it just say straight out by Miriam the same things? As Rashi brings the Gemara from here, it's a gnai to say that Hashem kissed Miriam. We learned Shiva leishalot ben rima v'taleah. There were 7 people that the bodies that nobody, that they're not affected at all by worms or anything else. Now, why mean we know now nominate 7 people, but we did learn before that tzaddikim, their bodies do not decompose at all. Even we had the Rabbi Loza, the Shimon's son. His body didn't decompose many years. He was lying there in the attic. We had a second pilot. But the difference is there they had maybe one. We have never had one worm come out of the ear of Rabbi Loza. Something, one place that's not perfect. But these were totally perfect. They were Avraham and Yaakov, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov again, and Moshe and Aaron and Miriam. And now we add Binyamin ben Yaakov and Binyamin as well. Now, where did Binyamin come from? Avraham and Yaakov, the Chsibu said, "B'chol bakam mikokol." Moshe and Aaron and Miriam, the Chsibu said, "Api Hashem." So therefore, how can worms have any effect? But Binyamin ben Yaakov, the Chsibu, it said by Binyamin, Binyamin Amar Yedid Hashem Yishkin Levetacholov. By Binyamin, it says that he rested. He was considered Yedid of Hashem. And he lies there secure because he's secure with the knowledge that he did of Hashem, so nothing else can affect him. The Yesh Aimim Av David, we include David here again. The Chsiv, it says Av Psari Yishkel Levetach. We find the same expression by David that Psari, my own flesh, Yishkel Levetach, sit secure. The Ida, so why doesn't the other one include David as well in the list? He was asking Hashem, it was a request, it wasn't a statement. It was a request that he should be secure. How do we learn? Arba 4, Mesa died, the Eater shall Nachash. That 5 people died because of the Nachash, but in other words, only because the Eibusha decreed, because of the Nachash and the sin of the Eitzadas, that know that Misa should come to the world, that's why they passed away. Not because of their own sins. And when Elohim, Binyamin ben Yaakov, Binyamin again, Amram Avi Moshe, Amram the father of Moshe, Yishai Avi David, and David my father Yishai. The Kilov, it seems that this is in addition to what we said before about Abraham, Yaakov, and Moshe, and Yishai Avi David, Yishai David's father. And some of these are a bit hard to understand because the Midrashim, but Yishai, he thought that night he was having a relationship with his Shifcha's maid. It turned out to be it was his wife, and they had David, and that's why they accused David of being a mamzer and all that. And yet we say that he was a tzaddik gomer. And Kilov ben David, and David and Melech had a son called Kilov, who would embarrass Mipi Boishes, who used to embarrass David and Melech. The Kula Gemara, all of this is tradition, no basis for it. Laban Yishai Avi David. Yishai, the father of David, there we actually have a pasuk. The Mefarim Ekram, there we actually says a pasuk. You see, it says a pasuk, there's Amasa, and this person known as Amasa, some Avshalom, Tachaz Yoyev, Avshalom placed him in place of Yoyev. Al Hatzav Anami, when Avshalom rebelled against his father. And who was this Amasa? Amasa was Ben Ish, who was the son of a person, Shmo Yisra HaYisraeli. He was the son of a person known as Yisra HaYisraeli, Ashebo El Avigail, that had a relationship with Avigail Bas Nochash, the daughter of the Nochash. Achois Truya, the sister of Truya, Aim Yoav, the mother of Yoav, actually a first cousin of Yoav. Oh, he bas nochashi. Well, she was daughter of a snake. Well, bas yishai. This is yishai. We know that. Yoav and W. They're all related. The Ksiva says a pasuk v'achesayim, and their sisters were Truya and Abigail, and two daughters, Truya and Abigail. Elabas mi shemes be'eter shanachash. She only passed away because of the seduction of the Nachash and other. Adon haloch hashutrim. Now begins the second page of Bava Basra Daf. And basically in Lo Yachber, it's discussing about things that I do in my side of the wall or my property, how it affects someone on the other side, my neighbor. And we discussed this about Metzia, an argument of Rabbi Yossi and the Rabbanon on who's the owners to make sure that they don't get affected by it. Is it we're just starting the second page here. So Machlekes Rabban Rabbi Yossi, who is the one that makes sure to avoid any damage? For example, we're talking about if you want to plant a tree and the neighbor has a boyer, you have to plant it 25 amos away. The Rabbanon say it's the mazik, the one who's causing the damage, that has to ensure that he doesn't cause any damage to the nizik. And Rabbi Yossi says, no, ala nizik laharchik. It's the nizik, it's his responsibility to make sure he doesn't get damage. But Rabbi Yossi is moide, concedes, if there's gita delay, it's your arrow. In other words, you're directly damaging somebody. Of course, you're not allowed to, and you have to make sure. We're talking about you're planting a tree. It takes years before the roots sprout everywhere. So then in that case, he says it's the nizik's job. Okay, just bear that in mind, and we'll start here. A person should not dig a pit in the ground, adjoining or adjacent to the boy of your friend, because obviously the walls will crumble and it will cause damage. Big machlekes is Rishonim here between Taisus, Ramban, and other Rishonim. Are we talking about a pit that's filled with water, and we're worried about that the water is going to leak into the other person's boy, the water causes damage, seepage? Or are we talking about even a boy without filling it with water? Just the very sense that you're building a boy, you're weakening the wall around the other person's boy, and therefore you have to worry, regardless of whether you fill with water or not. So big machlekes is there. Every time we say boy, most times we say boy, we always throw in shiach and maida. It's the same idea as a pit, but a different shape. Shiach is like a rectangle, and maida is, we say, it's a hole has a roof above it and a door on the side. Not a creek. A very shallow pool of water where you used to use to launder your clothes. Not make it next to your friend's property or his unless you distance it from the wall of your friend 3 tvach. Now, a wall is usually above the ground. A boy is below the ground. So you don't have a problem. You start off saying you're not allowed to build your boy next to the boy, and then you say don't build it next to the wall. So what are we saying over here? V'sad b'sid, and we'll see more later. It doesn't mean here, and it means or. So you have a choice. Either you build a certain distance, or you want to build it close. So you just put plaster on your wall, so that especially if it's water, it makes sense. So the water doesn't seep through because you put plaster on the wall. And even if it's not water, it strengthens the wall that it won't crumble. That's din number one. Next section. You also distance the gefes of the residue from olives, let's say. If it's necessarily only olives, or we're talking about just an example, but any other fruit as well. Zevel and fertilizer. Melech and salt. Seed and plaster. Sloyim, and Rashi says it's talking about flintstones. Something, the stones that cause fire. Here you have to distance from the wall of your friend, because these, eat away the soil or weakens the wall. It'll weaken the wall if it's too close to the wall. So you have to distance it from the wall. And we're not talking about all kinds of wall. We're talking about a wall, according to some are trying to say it's all kinds of walls, and some say that no, we're talking about with cement. So it eats away the cement. Next case, and some are goyish. Oh, you saw the seed, some are not goyish, but again, here you have a choice. Or you put plaster on the wall of your friend so that these things will not in any way erode the wall. Next section. Marchikin es azroim, you have to distance your plants because they're bad for the wall. That's a machrisha. The plow, obviously, if your plow goes too close to the wall, it softens the dirt and the wall destabilizes the wall. That's made of lime, so too urine as well. If you're near the wall, it's going to weaken the wall itself if it's made out of cement. And the acid in the urine, and again, you have to distance 3 tvachim. Umachikin is at a chaim. If you have a mill, you have to distance it shleisha. 3 min hashechiv. Remember the two parts in the mill. There's a stone on the bottom which we call shechiv, and the top one's called the rech of the rider. And the way that it sort of goes in, tapers in. So therefore, from the bottom it's 3 tvachim from the wall, and the top shehein abba min harechiv. For the top of the mill, it's 4 tvachim because it sort of tapers in. There's a tanner and an oven. So the oven also is like a cone that tapers in. So shleisha min akilya, 3 tvachim from the base of this, shein arba min asafah, which is 4 tvachim from the top. Again, because it goes in. And all why? The heat of the oven can undermine the stability of the wall. So you should distance it from the wall by a certain amount. Okay, so the Gemara starts off. Pasach the boy, you start talking about a boy. You tell me I should be 3 tvachim away from the person's pit, and then you tell me that from the wall. Now a wall's above ground, and the boy is below the ground. So which one is it? What are we talking about here? Amar Abaya, we tame Rabbi Yehuda. When we say kaisel, we don't mean the wall. We mean mikaisel boyrei shaninu. We mean from the distance. In other words, there's the perimeter of the person's boy, and then there's the internal. So when we said 3 tvachim, we would have thought it meant from inside the boy. Be 3 tvachim away. No. Be away from the wall surrounding the boy. So most of you saw, but listen. Why doesn't it just say? Tell us. You should distance from the boy to be 3 tvachim. So why throw a wall in the room? A commercial on the kaisel boy shleisha tvachim. Your own boy. In other words, you should be 3 tvachim away from the perimeter of the fence or from the boundary. You yourself should be 3 tvachim away because you boy also has a wall, and a wall for a boy is 3 tvachim. You have to allow 3 tvachim wall to hold whatever the contents of the boy within the boy, especially if it's water, it shouldn't see through. Or even a regular boy, if your wall is less than 3 tvachim, it'll crumble over time. It will cause damage. And therefore, you need to do so. By boy, means your own boy, not from his boy. Your own boy, you have to make your hole 3 tvachim from the boundary because your wall has to be 3 tvachim thick. That's what it means. Not mine of Kamina, the Mecca Chamemcha. We need to know when you buy, and it's a Titania, I'm selling the boy with his wall, you got to give him 3 tvachim more of this land, which is the perimeter of the bar. That's the wall of the bar.
Not 360 if you do side by side.
Exactly. 3 tvachim for your wall, 3 tvachim for the other guy's wall. Yes, exactly. Itmar, now we have an interesting machlekes the Bible. Are we talking about there's a pre-existing boy here, and therefore you have to build 3 or there's no boy there? Am I then allowed to build up to the boundary fence? Or even there's no boy there because the guy has the potential to build a boy, you have to take that into consideration when you're building a boy, when you have your initial plans. Furthermore, what about, okay, there's no boy there, but there's a field that needs a lot of irrigation, so therefore there's a good chance it'll build more boilers over time. What about a field that generally doesn't need irrigation? What are the chances you're going to build boilers in your field? Why give up, part of your field, tracts of your field, from instead of planting, you're going to build holes in them. So there's a field that's asuyah lasas boilers, and there's a field that she'ain asuyah lasas boilers. When we say in our Mishnah, you on your side of the property have to distance 3 tvachim, is it even in a case where not only there's no boiler, pre-existing boiler, even in a case where the chances of you building a boiler is slim? Says the Gemara. And so machlek is a Bava, and the 2 versions of how to understand the machlek is a Bava. The Itma we learned. We want to bring it right up to the boundary. Abaye says, you can. And Rabba says, he can't. What's going on? The Mishnah clearly says you can't. Mishnah, you have to distance 3 tvachim. So the Gemara explains as follows. If it's a field that's made for boirers, if the field is made for boirers, no, forget about a pre-existing boirer. Even if there's no pre-existing boiler, but there's a good possibility the person will build a boiler, then you have no right to build it up to the thing, because then he has to build it, 3 tvachim into. He'll lose 3 tvachim of land if he wants to build a boiler near the boundary, because he has to allow 3 tvachim for each side. Not fair. He pligi beside the she'ein asuyah l'boiler. The whole machlekes here is a field. There's no pre-existing boiler. Plus, the chances of him building a boiler are slim. Abaye says, you can bring it close to the boundary. Why do This is the only time that in the case where if there's everyone holds you cannot, if even though there's no boy, but if there's a good chance to build a boy, you're not allowed to bring it. That's what I'm just talking about. There's a field, there's a good chance to build a boy, you're not allowed to bring it up to the boundary. But if there's no chance, there's a very slim chance to build a boy, Abai says then you can. Why not? There's no problem. What are you worried about? Whatever the problems are, the guys that building a boy, there's no wall, nothing. Rabbi says, you never know. The guy has rights to build a boy. You have no right to vanquish that right. You have no right to eliminate that right from that person. Just like you build a boy there. Why did you build a boy? You had no need for it. You did one. No, I need to have the right to change my mind and to build a boy there as well. That's one version. Ikidami, version number 2. Beside the is where the chances of building a boy is very narrow. Then what's the problem? They're arguing a case where again there's no existing boy, and because if there's existing boy, everyone holds you not allowed to. You could call it them. There's no existing boy, and but there's a good possibility the guy will build a boy. So obviously, Robert says he can't. He's a bay, but a bay is a soimach. A bay says he can, and you have to ask. Is this the machlekes of Rabbi Yossi and Rabban? Rabbi Yossi says that is the problem is the nizik's problem, and especially there's no gira delay here because there's no boy there right now. The moment I'm not calling it damage. One day maybe that's not called gira, but according to Chachamim, the choyre, you're not allowed to even be a cause of damage. You're not allowed to plant a tree even though there's no damage right now. It takes years for the roots to grow.
Wouldn't you say that devalues his property? Because the next person, if I want to sell my property today, I have to sell it as a place where you can't build next to the wall. You have to go a long distance from the wall. Okay. It's much less value.
Good question. I guess it doesn't really diminish the property that much to that extent. If that's a person bought it, then I don't know. Good question. I feel the Rabbanon, and even the Rabbanon, the Amri they say, Machikin as a ilam and avoid esechosam. Even the Rabbanon say that the mazik has to avoid problems in the future. So how can you build your boy up to the fence? The boy is already existing. The problem, the eventual problem is real. It's not a theory, it's real. That boy is existing. I'm planting a tree. True, it takes years for it to eventually reach there, but we know it's going to happen. So the Chacham say, you're not allowed to do that. But over here, over here, there's no problem. And it's only theoretical. If the guy wants to build it. So therefore, even the Rabbi might be allowed to. That's a bayah. So bayah holds that even if it is the good possibility he will eventually build a boy. Right now he didn't build one. I'm not causing any damage. However, Rava says ain't the same. Rava says no. Since the person has a right to build a boy and there's a good possibility that he will, then you have no right to bring it up to the boundary. Now, according to the Rabbanan, it makes sense because you're going to cause damage, and he doesn't make that distinction that Bayah made if the thing is pre-existing or not. But according to Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yossi is only worried about a case. According to Rabbi Yossi, it's the nizik has problem, not the mazik. Why does Rabbi said that you're not allowed to bring it close? The nizik will have to worry about it when the time comes. He wants to build a boy. Rabbi Yossi says, you dig there and I will plant a tree here. I'm not causing any damage right now. Because the tree, when I plant it, does nothing. Years later, the roots continue growing. It'll take years and years and years before it reaches your place. So therefore, Rabbi Yossi says, I'm not doing any damage. I'm only a cause of damage. I am potter. But over here, as you're digging the hole, the digging itself weakens the wall. So I'm causing damage immediate. It's immediate damage. Right now, there's no roots. You're not making any damage. That's why. That's why. What do you call? The Rabbi Yossi says that over there you're allowed to. But over here, every time you take a shovel and you take some out and you bang it, you're weakening, you're destabilizing the land, and therefore you're causing me damage straight away. And even though, as those Rishonim hold, that the main problem is water, this is the Raya that the Rishonim say the problem is the hole itself, regardless of what you place in the hole. The other Rishonim say no, the problem is the water. But what we're saying here is that the damage already started now. Even though the main damage is the water, we're worried about the water seeping through, but the main problem starts now. But if all you did was made a hole that they hold, you're allowed to, but it's not going to be a problem. Okay, so now when you go through the different parts of the Mishnah and see, we'll try to work out according to Bayah and according to Rava. Tanan says in the Mishnah, it says don't build a boy next to the boy of your friend. Doesn't that sound like there's a pre-existing boy? So L'chayra Bayah is right. The Bayah said there's no pre-existing boy. You're permitted to build up to the fence, the boundary. It says in the Mishnah, don't build your boy next to the boy of your friend. Only because there's a pre-existing boy. Halek a boy. If there was no pre-existing boy, you can bring as close as you want. So according to that lashon that says that besada she'eina asuya lebayis, we have two versions. According to that version that says that a field that is not made to build bayis, then because it's the chances, you're not really going to cause damage, and probability you're never going to cause damage. Divrei hakol, everyone holds soymech allowed to bring it closer when there's no pre-existing bird. So the reason why our Mishnah has to nominate is a bird there, because otherwise it'll be permitted. So the Mishnah is talking about a case where generally people don't build birds, but they happen to have one there. So then don't build your bird next to that. Why can't you build your bird? Because there's a pre-existing bird. Is masnisim beside the shein asrei lebayis. Our field about a field that you don't normally build pits, and therefore only if there is a pit there you can't build next to it, but otherwise no problem. According to that language, that version, the Amr you say besada she'eina asri lebayis pligi, but according to that version that you say that it's talking about a sada that is not made for bayris, is bishleim elabaya. It makes sense according to Abaye. It makes sense. El Rava kasha, according to Rava, it's a problem. Because Rava says that you are not permitted to build next to the boundary, but the Mishnah says only the reason why you can't build it because there's a pre-existing bayit. Says Rava, didn't we learn? Abaye said, Rav Yehuda said, that in they say that that he has to build 3 tvachim not from the other person's boyer, it's for his own boyer. He needs to have a wall of 3 tvachim for his own boyer, and therefore Rava says he have no right to use the other person's sand as your wall. Therefore, you need to put 3 tvachim from the boundary, even though that maybe there's no boy there is, because you will be boy. When it says boy, it doesn't mean that neighbor's pre-existing boy. It means your boy. You need to have build your hole 3 tvachim from the wall, because your wall has to be 3 tvachim between your hole and the boundary. Ikidamri, others say that actually we use this part of the Mishnah as a question on Abaye. Abaye said, Abaye said that one is talking about the kaisel of the bird. Is bishleim lahachlish the 3 tvachim because you need 3 tvachim for the wall. Be of your own bird. Bishleim lahachlish the one that says bisadahu asuya libayers. If a field is made to build birds, everyone holds ain't same because there's a good likelihood you're going to build a bird, so you have to keep it distance. Then masnisin, and our Mishnah that says only when there's a boiler is besada. It's talking about sada asuya libayers. It's talking about a field made for boilers, and therefore because everyone agrees that you're not allowed to, even though there's no pre-existing boiler, everyone agrees that you're not allowed to build next to a boiler, a potential boiler, then it makes sense. The version that you said that that even though there's a possibility he'll build a boiler, a probability, but right now there's no boiler, there's no problem. Is bishleim Rava makes sense. Abaye, since that even though the guy's going to build a boiler, there's no boiler existing right now. You're telling me that when the Mishnah says samach lebayir, doesn't mean your neighbor's boiler, it means your own boiler. You got to keep 3 tvachim from the wall. Why? There's no pre-existing bird. Abaye holds you allowed to be soymich. You're allowed to bring as close as possible to the boundary. Why does the Mishnah say keep 3 tvachim away if there's no other bird there? According to the version that even if you're going to build a boy one day, it doesn't matter, but right now there's no boy, you can build it up to the boundary. When the Mishnah says you cannot build up to the boundary, if there's no pre-existing boy, both neighbors decided to build at the same time. You're building at the same time, then even though the boy isn't there yet, he has as much right as you, therefore you have to keep 3 tvachim away. Okay. Toshma, coming here, it says later on, Sella, Habo biyadayim. What about if the sand is so soft, you pick up the rock, it just falls apart in your hand? So it's very soft, no, it's not very strong as a foundation, the sand. At each one you can build a bar on each side of the boundary, but this guy has to distance 3 tvachim and he has to put plaster to strengthen the wall. So the Chaylik seems clear from here that even though that there's no pre-existing bar yet, nevertheless you have to build a 3 tvachim boundary, and Abaye said to bring it up to the boundary. Says, what are you talking about? Shiny. Is this an exceptional case? The sand is very soft, and therefore it's all eventually going to crumble and fall apart. So the Gemara asks, in fact, the Kolam. In fact, what was Gemara's question in the first place? Don't you realize this is exceptional that you're not allowed to build too close to the boundary because you're basically going to ruin all the dirt and everything else? But Gemara said, no, Bobby a dime. The Chiddush is Bobby a dime. What do you mean? I would have thought Even the body is dying because the sand is so soft. Maybe you need more than 3 tvachim. No, a normal bar is 3 tvachim. If there is an existing bar there, you have to be 3 tvachim. You know, you need 3 tvachim wall versus his 3 tvachim wall. But if it's soft dirt, maybe you need 4 tvachim or 5 tvachim. Come that's easy enough. It says in the Mishnah, Machikin, as a gefet, as a zevel, as a melech, all these elements. You have to distance from the wall, as a sid, as a sloim, and then the plaster, and these flintstones, that you should keep it 3 tvachim away from the wall of the friend. Or you put plaster on the wall so that it doesn't get affected by these things. Time, but again, only reason why you have to keep the distance because there's an existing wall. Sounds like, and this is talking about a wall above the ground. There's no existing wall. You can bring it as close as possible there. No. There's no wall. The question of Abaya. Abaya holds that if there's no wall, there's no problem. They don't know. Even if there's no wall, says Rabbi, says Abaya, you're not allowed to bring it. Says Rabbi, this is a raya to Abaya. Only because there's a wall there, you have to keep it distant. Let's say there's no wall there, then you can put all these elements right next to the boundary. It doesn't prove like Abaya that only there's a pre-existing wall or pit that we're worried. Not like Rabbi. Says the Gemara, doesn't that support Abaya? Says Rabbi, no. It doesn't matter if there's a wall there. So why mention kaisel? Well, my commercial, how can I teach you the hani kosher kaisel? Can I tell you that these things can affect the wall? So we're explaining why do you have to keep the distance? It's not from everything. It's only these things because they can ruin the wall. So therefore, even the wall does not exist. You're not allowed to put it there because the guy has a right.
He has just teaching you.
Halachah.
In building. It's not.
No, this is halach. The halacha is that these things, other things you don't have to worry about, but these things you do have to worry about. Some things you wouldn't even think of. You know, these Flintstones, why should it even be an issue? Some things you wouldn't even think of. Mission continues. You have to distance the zroyim, the machrisha, the plows, the meilaglayim, urim, and a kaisel, shloisha tvach. Again, it says ben a kaisel. Same question. Time, but you can the wall. How long a kaisel? Something you're going to close the parcels around me. Again, only there's a wall existing. No. My commercial is going to teach you how commercial the misunta kaisel that these wet things are bad for the wall. Toshma, the Mishnah continues. Gimel min hashechem, 3 from the bottom stone, shein daled min which is 4 from the top stone. Time kaisel. Again, the Mishnah says it's talking about a wall. How like a kaisel samich. Same thing. All support Abaya that only there's a pre-existing issue that we say don't go ahead to the boundary. Again, was a loino. That these things that vibrations, when you have a millstone, it vibrates, and vibrations are bad for a wall. So that these are examples to teach you a principle. But that's why even if there's no wall, you shouldn't do it because you're taking away that person's ability to build the wall in the future. Tashma coming here, the Satana, the oven, Shleisha, Minakil, 3 from the for the bottom of the base, Shein Talib Minasaf. Again, we're talking about there's a wall there. Time, it sounds like there's no wall you can bring close. Like, no. There's no wall also you cannot bring close. And my Kamashlan was to teach you how Kamashlan, the Havala, Kosher, teach you that heat is bad for the wall as well. Okay, we'll stop over here. We'll continue tomorrow night.